When you're invited over to someone's house for dinner, it's most likely that you'll spend the evening enjoying good food and conversation with friends and family. Generally, people don't invite others into their home with intentions to do them harm and genuinely just want to have a good time. Sometimes, though, your host has darker intentions. Anyone who's watched the renowned series Game of Thrones or read the novels by George R.R. Martin will likely agree that one of the standout incidents throughout the 7 seasons was the infamous Red Wedding. But did you know that that wasn't entirely something crafted in the brilliant mind of the author? George R.R. Martin drew inspiration from a specific historical event that took place in 1440 in Scotland. The events that unfolded that fateful night, which would later be dubbed the Black Dinner, left a lasting change in Scottish history and saw 2 young members of the country's fiercest clans ripped from the castle and murdered. The story began when James Stewart II was crowned king following his father's assassination in 1437. King James II was not yet 7 years old at the time, and for that very reason, he could not take his seat on the throne until he was mature enough to do so. Having a child ruling a country was obviously not practical or possible for that fact, so it was Archibald Douglas who took over the rule once King James II was old enough for the throne. Archibald was the 5th Earl of Douglas, and he ruled until his passing in 1439. The passing of his father, King James I, was a dramatic tale. In the evening hours of February 20th, 1437, James was lying in his bed alongside his beloved, the beautiful Lady Joan Beaufort. He had fallen in love with her over 10 years prior, and in 1424 they married. James was considered to be a good leader. He was an intelligent man who enjoyed writing his own poetry and was an accomplished athlete himself. James would have enjoyed many successful years on the throne if it were not for the actions of his own uncle and fellow conspirators. James and Joan heard a commotion outside that evening as 30 men attempted to gain access to the monastery they were staying in. James rushed to close the door but found the metal rod that would allow him to do so was missing. Then he tried to escape through the windows but found they had been sealed shut. At that point, he likely realized this was all a well-orchestrated plan. In a last-ditch attempt to save his own life, James tried to pull up the floorboards and access the sewer below. He entered the sewer tunnel but soon realized it was blocked on the other end. That had been something James instructed his servants to do so his tennis balls would stop getting lost in the drains. There, inside the sewer, James was murdered. Joan managed to escape with her life despite being injured, and James II was away, being kept safe when the incident occurred. Following the death of Archibald Douglas in 1439, a power struggle broke out between various groups. The 2 main players in the drama were those surrounding Joan Beaufort and Chancellor William Crichton. Archibald's death also left a considerable amount of wealth and power to his 15-year-old son, William Douglas, who took over his role as the stand-in king. He was now the 6th Earl of Douglas and considered one of the most powerful men in Scotland by way of birthright and status. However, the teenage boy would not get much of a chance to settle into his new role. On November 24, 1440, 16-year-old William and his younger brother David were invited for dinner at Edinburgh Castle. He had no idea what was to come. As they tucked into the lavish spread, a black boar's head was brought out and placed directly in front of William. That was a symbol of death during the times and marked the go-ahead to the conspirators for their plan to begin. William and David were grabbed and ripped out of the hall. Young James II was there that evening and didn't understand what was happening, yelling for the men to release the 2 boys. As he was just a boy himself, his words held little weight. He did know, however, that what was happening went against the medieval codes where guests invited into one's residence were protected from harm. William and David were taken to Castle Hill, where a sham trial followed. They were found guilty of being traitors and beheaded that same day. In retaliation, the Douglas clan set out to attack Edinburgh Castle. To stop that, William Crichton handed the castle over to the Douglas clan. He was rewarded by becoming a lord. The attempt to dissolve the power held by the Douglas clan backfired on the conspirators, though. Instead, they only grew more powerful in the aftermath. That continued even after James II took the throne, with members of Clan Douglas holding many significant positions of power within the government. But that alliance of sorts would not last forever. You see, King James II would break the very rule he saw broken as a boy in 1452 when he invited William Douglas, the 8th Earl of Douglas, to Stirling Castle. There, he accused him of conspiracy against the throne along with 2 other men, John MacDonald and Alexander Lindsay. William Douglas didn't even receive a mock trial. Instead, King James II stabbed him 26 times with his dagger. That sparked a civil war between Clan Douglas and the Crown, which saw the Crown withdrawing the clan's land and holdings, effectively ending their power. Stories like that during the medieval time and the years that followed are hardly unusual. Power was the most valuable asset of all, and many would stop at nothing to have it in their grasp. However, the Black Dinner still holds a place as one of the more dreadful incidents during the time, and without it, George R.R. Martin may have never created the Red Wedding, one of the most grisly scenes in cinematic history. Thanks for letting us tell you this sinister story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and hit like, rate it, or leave a comment. Join us next week when we'll take you somewhere sinister.